All right, everybody. How are we doing? A quick time check. It's 2:02 p.m. on the East Coast on Tuesday, January 20th. Welcome to the first episode of the Braves podcast. I'm Harrison Smajovits, the beat writer for Atlanta Braves on SI. We're going to do this every week. Today it's on Tuesday. The goal is to do it on every Tuesday going forward. And the goal here, talk to all the Atlanta Braves rumblings that you have been wondering about heading into today. Every episode, we're going to cover 3 hot button topics. And toward the end, we'll open the floor, see if any questions come in from our lovely viewers, and we'll see what we'll have in store for you. All right, let's get into it. Ha-Seong Kim, the Atlanta Braves, they finally get their shortstop, and he's already going to be out for the first few months of the season. He had to undergo surgery to fix a torn tendon in his right middle finger on Sunday, and he is expected to miss 4 to 5 months. And just to make sure there's clarification on what 4 to 5 months means, that is when he's supposed to be back and playing. Are setbacks possible? Of course, but this is the current timetable that we are expected to see him in his recovery back. The injury happened when he was back home in Korea, and the procedure was done here in Atlanta. It's a tough break for the Braves. They are still working their way back from last year's injuries. Let's see. Sean Murphy is still dealing with a hip. Grant Holmes is working a partially torn UCL. Austin Riley has been recovering over the offseason. They had all their starters on the 60-day injured list at one point last year. We don't even know yet how Ozzy Albies is going to look because of his wrist last year. Toward the end of the season, his injury. He's going to be available to play, but as we saw with how he performed for most of last year, it seemed like there was work toward him finally finding his stride. But the point is, now you have to deal with Kim on top of this. We'll have to see how he looks when he gets back. It's unfortunate for him because he's now going to be dealt injuries for back-to-back seasons. And for the Braves, they have to figure out their shortstop situation. They have made a move in response. They signed Jorge Mateo, who was with the Orioles for many years before this, to a 1-year, $1 million contract. It's looking like it's mainly going to be a depth piece. Before they had signed, or should I say they had re-signed Ha-Seong Kim because he was with the team for a bit last year at the end of the season. It looked like Mauricio Dubon, who was acquired from the Astros in a trade for Nick Allen a couple months ago, was presumed to be the starting shortstop. If we had to take a guess, Dubon is probably still going to end up being the opening day shortstop unless Mateo or somebody else just has a really good spring training and the Braves' hands are tied and they have to go and, pivot to somebody else. Obviously, the Mateo move is not going to be the most thrilling one, but given the circumstances with who would be available on the shortstop market, it is a pretty good addition. Think about it from this perspective. The market, even with guys like Kim available, was very thin this year. If you're going to bring in an external option without making a trade, without going down to the farm and seeing who could be available, you're going to have to make a move like this. And in the end, Mateo is an experienced guy. He used to be the starting shortstop for the Orioles a few years ago. That has now become Gunnar Henderson's role, and he's dealt with some injuries himself the last few years. So that's still a question we got to see plays out. Is Mateo going to be much of a factor with his health? Because he's been on the 60-day injured list the last 2 seasons once apiece. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But if he is healthy, he is someone who's known for having a solid glove. He has speed. He has stolen over 30 bases in a season before. He has 106 in his career so far. He could even be a pinch running option if the Braves want to keep him around in some capacity. He has played other positions, so if they even want to try it where, if there's a day where Albies needs to be off his feet, maybe he can play some second base and Dubon plays shortstop. There's ways to move things, players around with this option. But if you want to just discuss some potential options who could also play shortstop for the Braves as well, we can definitely go into that too. Naturally, there's going to be Nacho Alvarez as an option. He's been a shortstop primarily in the minor leagues. He hasn't played shortstop for the Braves, like at the major leagues yet. He's been at second base when Albies was hurt. He filled in for Austin Riley when he was hurt at the end of last season. He looked pretty good in the Arizona Fall League, especially toward the end. Had a bit of a cold start and then really heated up as play went on. He went out there to get some extra playing time because, surprise, he was also part of the Braves injury bug early last season, and he had them, make up some of that playing time. But it ended up looking good for him because he played well in that setting, and that bodes well for him going into spring training. If you want to throw another wild card option out there, Eli White, in theory, could be a shortstop. Like if you go online and you look at the depth chart, he is listed as one, but he hasn't actually played shortstop yet for the team. He's mainly been an outfielder. And yeah, there was that one inning where he came in and he played first base because it was a blowout and they just wanted to get Matt Olson off his feet. Don't get used to that though. Olson is a all day, every day kind of guy. But if you want to just think of those options too, there's Eli White. There's Aaron Schunk, who was signed to a minor league contract earlier this month. He had played some time with the Rockies. Not anything to write home about with his stats. He batted under 200. He only played a small sample size too, but his AAA stats with Albuquerque looked pretty promising, so you never know. There's also a guy named Jim Jarvis who the Braves could turn to. He came over in the Rafael Montero trade back in July. So he's only played a handful of AAA games. He did play some time, and he did spend some time in the Arizona Fall League. But so the most outside of outside options right now. But again, circle back to the idea of if he maybe has a good spring training, he impresses the Braves, and some of these guys might be able to convince the team to use a 40-man roster spot for them. But we'll see how it all plays out. We still have to see how Kim progresses. Pitchers and catchers haven't even reported yet, let alone is spring training even close to starting. It's about a month away before we actually see live action down in the Grapefruit League and Northports. So moving on for now, the starting pitching situation for the Braves. They have been someone who has been, they are looking to add. That has been known. We know they have interest in Freddie Peralta. Multiple sources have put that out. We've heard the same thing. He's a clear, obvious target for great reasons. He was an all-star last year, 2.70 ERA. He made 33 starts. He's consistently made 30 starts the last few years. I believe there might be one exception there, but he provides innings. How close are the Braves to a deal? Well, that's kind of up in the air. There's definitely talks going on, but we'll have to wait and see if anything really comes about. Like obvious prospects who could be in play. J.R. Ritchie, who was their top rising prospect last year. You never know. Maybe they find a way to center the deal around Hurston Waldrop with how he played toward the end of last year, and he was a top prospect. He was number 4 in the system, according to MLB.com, before he made his debut and graduated from prospect status. I don't think Cam Kennedy would be in play as a top prospect, but you never know. Maybe the Brewers want to invest long-term in a lefty prospect. I would say Ritchie is the most likely. But again, we won't know until a trade comes about for them. And either way, it makes sense that they would want to add another arm. As I mentioned earlier at the start of the episode, you had it where the Braves had at one point all 5 of their starters on the 60-day injured list at the same time. Bryce Elder was their most consistent starting pitcher. He had 27 starts. That's not an ideal situation for this team. If you're the Braves, you want to bring in an experienced quality arm who can give you innings. Like they definitely missed Charlie Morton's innings last season. Not that Morton would have provided it with the way he had pitched with Baltimore and Detroit last season, but at the same time, you get where I'm going with that. So if you have a durable guy like Peralta come in, he would make a pretty good fit. And just for other names who have come around, been mentioned related to the Braves, I know we have talked about Framber Valdez. Ken Rosenthal talked about Framber Valdez, especially because Martin Maldonado is now in the front office for the Braves. Unless there's some kind of substantial update on that front, I wouldn't even think about it at this point. I would imagine at this point he's not signing here. Unless we hear anything else, I wouldn't bank on that, no matter how much he could potentially be chatting with his old friend Maldonado about that. Well, at this point, heading into the season, this is probably what the Braves rotation will look like. And this is assuming that nobody is added, because there's no guarantees on that. We have to project based on what we have in front of us. So Chris Sale's a guarantee. Spencer Strider's a guarantee. Spencer Schwellenbach's a guarantee. And just based on what general manager Alex Anthopoulos has said in press conferences, it seems like Ronaldo Lopez seems to be guaranteed a rotation spot for now. It's already been confirmed. He and Grant Holmes are going to warm up as starting pitchers in spring training. Holmes is, though, unlike Lopez, he's not guaranteed a spot even in the pitching staff, let alone the rotation. Alex Anthopoulos has made it clear he has spoken to Holmes about it, but he is still an option. Even with rehabbing a partially torn UCL, they are still going to treat him like he is warming up and ramping up as a starting pitcher. I would not be surprised, though, if he ended up being a long relief option in the bullpen. He has that kind of experience, and it would bring some value, especially in certain situations where if you want to give the back end of the bullpen, Robert Suarez and Raisel Iglesias, the night off, he can come in, pitch those last 2 innings, close the door, or if there's a blowout, he can go deeper than that if he needs to. There's value there. Hurston Waldrop, not guaranteed a rotation spot despite how well he pitched last season. Personally, he'd be a little bit higher up on my list with how he looked, but I understand that they need to keep some spots open. You can't guarantee everybody anything. There are still, even without external additions to this team, more options for the rotation than there are spots. Assuming there are 5, 6-man rotation comes out sometimes in discussions, but the Braves have not indicated they really want to move to that. You have Bryce Elder. In theory, J.R. Ritchie, if he is around this regular season, you have it where he could get called up. He's expected to see major league action next season based on how he looked last year. He could jump in the rotation at any time. There's plenty of options out there that can prevent the Eric Fetties, the Cal Quantrells, and the Carlos Carrascos from coming about. Well, actually, maybe I should give the Carlos Carrasco some credit because he actually still is in the system, and you just never know if they might need those innings. So again, we'll have to see. Right now, there's at least 2 spots available. At most, there are 2 spots available in the rotation, and there is at most 1 still available before pitchers and catchers even reports. All right, we are moving on to the third topic of the day, and that is a fun discussion point that's come about. I've seen it online just because of with who has been signing major contracts. Kyle Tucker to the Dodgers. Average annual value about $57.1 million from a luxury tax standpoint. If you do the regular average salary math, he makes about 60 this year. He will make $60 million per year. Bo Bichette, $42 million with his deal with the Mets. I believe that's still pending a physical, but the point is that's still a pretty hefty dollar amount. Both these guys are now making more money than Aaron Judge, who makes about 40. He's won 3 MVPs. He's a 7-time All-Star. He's a reigning MVP in the American League. And it just shows how much the average annual value has continued to skyrocket the last few years. And it's making a lot of people wonder, what would Ronald Acuna Jr. make if he was going to be a free agent now? If he was a free agent now, what would he be making? And for context, over the next few years, he is guaranteed to be making $17 million a year for 2026, and then 2027, 2028, they are club options that are worth the exact same amount. But you have to look at these types of deals. Look, Kyle Tucker is a top player in the game. He was a starting outfielder along with Acuna last year in the All-Star game. There's logic to why he's getting the money he's getting. But there's also the argument that Acuna is still a player who is rated above some of these big free agents. He's certainly a better player than Bo Bichette. He has the better glove. He has the speed. He has more power. And I just want to pull up some stats here as well, just so we can get this discussion going. Kyle Tucker, a 4-time All-Star, 1 Gold Glove, 2 Silver Sluggers. He has the postseason experience. He won a World Series with the Astros in 2022. His best finish in MVP voting is 5th. Then you have Bo Bichette. He was part of the Blue Jays run to the World Series last year, 2-time All-Star. His defense needs a lot of work, and there's a reason why he's not going to be a shortstop going forward. Teams want him as either a second baseman or a third baseman. The Blue Jays used him as a second baseman on their run to the World Series. They used Andres Jimenez as their shortstop, and that's who it's going to be going forward. They acquired him ahead of last season. He still is a good bat. He has his injury history, but so does Acuna. So all that will be taken into account, of course. But when you look at the numbers, Acuna, 5-time All-Star, 3-time Silver Slugger, MVP in 2023, who had the 40-70 season. He wasn't healthy when the Braves were in the World Series in 2021, but he has his share of postseason experience. He has played in the League Championship Series before. He was also, and as I mentioned already, starting outfielder alongside Tucker. Keep this in mind. Acuna didn't play till late May. That's just how good he was, that he was able to rocket up in the voting to be a starting outfielder despite having missed most of the season. That normally doesn't happen. There was like a stat I remember seeing that compared him to Joe DiMaggio with how he had pulled that off. And remember, DiMaggio played in the 40s and 50s. So we're talking a long time since we've seen that. Comparing just last season, Acuna had better numbers in 95 games than both of the other two guys who just gotten paid. And there's still one more guy I want to get to when talking about the full contract he could be worth. But right now I'm sticking to the current two recently signed free agents. Tucker batted .266, 841 OPS, 22 home runs, 73 RBIs. Bichette, 311, 840 OPS, 18 home runs, 94 RBIs. Acuna, 920 average. Sorry, 290 average. Getting ahead of myself. 935 OPS with 21 home runs and 42 RBIs. Acuna has the better OPS. He has more home runs in fewer games than Bichette. Tucker only has 1 more home run. RBIs, if he had played more games, obviously he would have done better with that. Keep in mind the Braves offense as well, though I don't want to add that extra perk on top of Acuna because, well, I'm not giving that benefit of the doubt to the others. I don't necessarily want to give that to Acuna to keep it fair. But the point is, when healthy, Acuna is going to be a better overall ball player than the rest of them. I just want to point this out too. Kyle Tucker had 25 stolen bases. Bichette was in the single digits. Acuna still managed to have more stolen bases despite being on a limit. And you have it where he probably would have had more stolen bases than Tucker if he had played a full year as well. And he was allowed to let loose. He's looked really good in Venezuela. You never know. Maybe he'll get to let loose a little bit more this upcoming season. So you have to imagine the average annual value for Acuna, even with his injury history, is going to be significantly high. If I had to take a guess, and I'm also just going to pull in one more example here. I'm looking at Juan Soto's contract from last year, $765 million. Granted, Soto is a free agent now in his late 20s. By the time Acuna is a free agent, he's going to be a little bit older. I don't think he's going to get over $700 million just because of the nature of how long a deal could potentially be. And teams also just trying to factor in what they're going to get in the future. I don't think it's crazy to say, though, Acuna could be worth 8 years, $600 million, and that gives him an average annual value of $75 million. I know that number sounds absolutely absurd. And up until maybe this year, I would have thought the same thing. But you have guys in 2025 pushing toward that $60 million AAV. go 3 years down the road, is it really going to be that crazy at that point? We now have it where guys are making over $700 million. What's 600 million for Acuna for one of these teams who's looking to bring in a superstar outfielder? I think Acuna is 25% better than Tucker, 25% more of an average annual value. Like, it's honestly kind of crazy to think. I know I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, but just when you see with how much salaries have gone up over the last few years, I remember, I think it's like 2013, MLB Network had this discussion. Will Bryce Harper be the first $400 million player? He wasn't. That was Mike Trout. He signed that deal like a week after Harper became one of the first $300 million players, and I believe it was 2019. But it just shows that was a number back then that sounded so absurd. Like, the big contract at the time everyone used to talk about was Alex Rodriguez with $250 million. I believe Kershaw, when he got his deal around that time, was a little over 200. I think Miguel Cabrera in 2014 got 292. And even then, those were considered big, absurd numbers. It just shows how exponential this is. And it also reflects the steal of a deal that the Braves have been able to get with Acuna. By the time you get through all of his options, he's going to be about 10 years, $124 million. That's going to be one of the biggest steals of a decade with who Acuna is as a player. So if you're the Braves, you got to figure out, at least I think, as soon as possible, how to extend him. I know there's a debate, should you trade him? I don't think they should. I think that's a mistake. You need to find out any way possible to keep your superstar player. And you know what? I think they would be wise to look at some of the upcoming club option years and potentially get those worked out, renegotiated, get an extension started sooner, because his contract is only going to be even higher. Like, it's not going to be until long that we have the first discussion on who is the first billion-dollar player. Like, what would Ohtani be worth now just 2 years later? Because he got 700 million. Would he be 900? Would he be the billion-dollar player we're discussing? I think that's a fun one. We'll circle back to that conversation at some point later and in the future when we reach that point. And there's only one logical reason the Braves would want to wait. I don't think this is a good reason whatsoever, but this is the only reason that I can think of. So the collective bargaining agreement's coming up. It's going to expire next year. There might be a lockout. That's in the back of everyone's minds. But there might be a push for a salary cap. I'm not pro salary cap. I don't think the players are going to go for it. But let's say in theory, it is something that could happen. Perhaps if you're the Braves, you're thinking this could happen. Let's wait and see, because that could bring the value of a contract down. I don't think that'd be wise to wait and see if that happens, and I don't think it's a justifiable reason either, but we'll see how everything comes out and what is their next move, because in the end, with all these players coming and getting bigger deals, it's only a matter of time until it's Acuna's turn. So I guess we shall see about that. So that will do it for the hot button topics of this week. All right, we do not have any questions, it appears, for this time. So I think that'll wrap it up for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to the very first episode or watching the first episode of the Braves podcast. Again, I'm Harrison Smajovits. If you want to go and read some more content as well and stay on top of the Braves news, go to Atlanta Braves on SI, the website. We'll be back next week for episode 2. We will see you then.